everybody. Agnes is in the house with Marv and me today. Agnes Verelli.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
A true OG in the law of assumption space. Agnes, how long have you had your channel for?
Oh, I think 10 years, but for the first 3, I was really sporadic because it was just part of my life coaching course to put up some videos, and I wasn't really taking that part seriously. So I drifted in and out quite a lot in those first 3 years.
Yeah. And well, I mean, YouTube also really changed, I feel like, in the whole law of assumption community has changed. So I think Marv and I are both probably curious your thoughts on this, or just some things you've noticed about how Neville, how, first of all, how more popular Neville has become via social media. But like, I remember, because I first got into Nev as well, I first started talking about him in online about 10 years ago. It just seems like it was presented very differently than it is now in the law of assumption. So yeah, I mean, can you describe your journey briefly? This is a super start of, wow, really formal interview.
That's all right. That's okay. Brief overview. I got my first Neville book in the 90s. My law of attraction friend, who is now in her 70s, and we still do law of attraction work together every week. And a lot of our basis is Neville. And there was no internet then, as in there was obviously the beginnings of internet, but not like we use it today. And I mean, YouTube's only about 10, 11, maybe 12 years old now. So it wasn't online. It was more in books, highlighting stuff and then discussing it via conversation. So I think it was much easier to do that than it is now, because unless you're listening to Neville in his own words, you're getting people's interpretations. I feel like after 30 years of reading Neville, I'm only just beginning to really, really understand what he's talking about. I think he is easy to say, yeah, I get what he's saying, but you can read the same book 2 years, 5 years, 10 years later. It is a whole different read because you've shifted, different parts of the books come alive. So yeah, I really think Neville is a wonderful, fantastic resource. And him and Florence Scovel-Shinn were the first 2 in my journey. And they're still the books I go back to again and again. So yeah, Neville it's an experience of understanding the knowledge in a way that you can apply it to what you're going through, but also it's remembering I think, and this is what I find is the challenging part of Neville. It's when people start talking about him, it's like he said this, he said that, but Neville evolved as he wrote his books, just like we are. So what he might have said in the Law and the Promise, he didn't say years later in another book. He shifted, and it's remembering that he was going through his journey as we are going through ours. So that was the beginnings of my journey. And then, many, many other books later. But Neville is definitely, it's like a 3-legged stool. I had Neville, Florence, Joseph Murphy, and I still sit on that stool on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that. It's, something Marv and I always talk about, especially recently, is just how people can't seemingly get through even a whole YouTube video about a law of assumption concept. Mind you, not even Neville talking about the law of assumption, but somebody else. And it just seems so vastly different learning about these concepts in that way compared to highlighting a Neville book and then talking to your friend about it and meditating upon the book in that manner. It just seems so different than having a hard time or watching different people, not even Neville, speaking about these concepts. In my opinion, it's 2 different things basically because of what you alluded to.
Yes.
the inner, as you say, you read Neville, and sometimes like you feel like you're just beginning to grasp what he's saying, and you've been into him for 10, 20, years, or what have you, 30
Yeah.
years. So
Yeah. I mean, these days I only listen to Neville in his own voice. I don't really, I just think, and it's no disrespect to anyone, I just think it takes decades to really understand what he's doing. And also, it's trying it out and then seeing what the results are. And I mean, he talks a lot about the law of assumption. He talks a lot about, living in the end, imagination creates reality. Everyone's you pushed out. They're kind of his bumper stickers, but it's actually taking the words off the page, applying it, seeing how you can transform your situation. That's when Neville's words come alive. So I would rather listen to Neville in his own voice and take it from the source, and then from that,
right,
make my mistakes or make my manifestations, learning, whatever. But the law of assumption is great, but you can't just have the law of assumption on its own. There are the laws all dovetail together. You can't just study law of attraction because it's just one law. There are so many other laws that fit together. And Neville honed in on the law of liberty, the law of assumption. Those are the two that he talked about a lot. So it's like you're getting a piece of the puzzle, and then it's up to you to go and find out about, the other laws. I mean, Dan Millman wrote a book, and it was The Spiritual Laws. And it was a fantastic book because he goes through all the different laws. I mean, there's more than just 7, of course, but it gives you a broader range. So you start with Neville, and then you build and find out about the other laws. And it's like building a puzzle. You put it together, and then it starts to really come alive.
I think you made a great point on yes, because that's something that we've been talking about recently is people are finding out about Neville through YouTubers. And it's good, but every coin has 2 sides, right? And it could become dangerous. And I think your point is really the point, and we've said this in past videos, is Neville is the original source. And I didn't realize this. Well, not Neville is the original source, but you guys know what I mean. If you want to learn about Neville, you should actually listen and read Neville, right? And something that I didn't really pay attention to over the past until the past few months was I realized a lot of people have never actually read Neville. They might have read only one book, or some people haven't read Neville at all, because like Tim and I, we have this questionnaire that we have people fill out. And in the questionnaire, at times we see people have never read a Neville book, but they know about Neville's concepts because of another YouTuber potentially. But the danger behind that is some people they mean well, but they may be missing out on crucial details and not telling and explaining the whole I guess dichotomy of what Neville's teachings are really trying to say. And so that's where, like I said, I agree with you 1,000% that people that want to study Neville, a lot of times, it's unless you're dealing with somebody like an Agnes, who's an OG in this, I always like to consider her like the Florence of today. You know what I mean, on YouTube.
Can you enlighten me? What's OG? What is it?
OG is original gangster. That's what. It's like a term. It's like a term in the States where
it's a compliment.
It's a compliment, meaning like you've been around for a long time. That's what it really means. Like you've been around for a long time. And, you're like the original.
Because you were doing this stuff and teaching this stuff, and on YouTube, like
before anybody really.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like,
and so that's why I say that term. But but no, you're right though. You're 100%. You're 100% right. And if you want to learn about Neville, if you really want to try, like for instance, we know the SP topic is a big topic. If you really want to learn about applying SP topics and applying Neville's words with SP topics, then you really want to read his material as much as you can, front to back, or you can go to somebody like an Agnes or Tim or myself, because we're not going to sensationalize the words of Neville or some of these other, we're not going to sensationalize it the way that it has become sensationalized per se on YouTube. So if you can go, read Neville and listen to him yourself instead of just finding. And I was very shocked when I saw that when I read the questionnaires, and I was like, wow, I'm thinking people have read at least a couple of his books. And then I'm realizing, wow, nobody's reading his books. A random 18, 19, 20-year-old or 25-year-old, their first introduction to Neville and all they know about Neville is from somebody off of YouTube, and they've never actually taken the time to read his books or even a Abraham Hicks or even a Florence's books. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And I think too, Marvin, look, this is no different to people reading the Bible and interpreting it, like I know I didn't grow up religious, so I only read I went through bits of the Bible when I started reading Neville because he quotes a lot of things from the Bible and I didn't understand what he was talking about. So I would go in and go, okay, let me look this up and let me read it and let me talk to some of my friends that are perhaps a bit more understanding of this text, and we'd have discussions about it. But I think one of the most important things, whether you're listening on the SP topic or the Neville Goddard topic, find out if the person you are listening to, one, has, and you might say 5 years of Neville is enough for me, that I feel like I can listen to this person and feel they've got credibility, because everybody's got their different benchmark. But also on the topic of specific person, there needs to be, and when I first read Neville, that's why I first read Neville. He actually said you could manifest a specific person. I'd never heard of that because I'd read Florence first, and she was saying, no, you pray for the divine design, perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect love, perfect self-expression. You do not, and you let Source, God, infinite intelligence, bring you the best person for you. Neville went the other route. So they go around the circle in different ways. But I remember thinking, well, I agree with both. Let me try both at different times. I'd try like Florence for like a year, and then I'd put my effort into Neville for like a year and see which one worked for me. But it was Neville's own story because Neville manifested his wife. And he tells you that story, and he tells you what happened with his first wife, et cetera, et cetera. So I remember thinking, well, hang on. I'd never heard of that concept, but let me try what he did and let me just use it as a cookie cutter to work out if this will work for me. Now, this story you already know, Marvin. I've been with my person for 11 years now, and I applied many things from Neville, and also, because I'm big on self-love, it's not just Neville, because I see with a lot of people that come through that are in a desperate state, they go, okay, I'm doing living in the end, and I'm living in imagination because imagination creates reality and the law always works. And they're quoting this stuff to me. And I think, yes, but you're coming from desperation. You've got no self-love underneath. So it doesn't matter how much living in the end you do.
Right.
Even if it works for a fleeting moment, you will not maintain it because your resolve is paper thin in the state of love. You're not in a state of love. You're in a state of getting. You're in a state of taking. That energy is never going to be able to withstand you pasting on top of it, living in the end. The card house will crumble. So it's like if you are going to listen to someone, I would basically ask some questions. Have you got a specific person? How long have you had them? And how long have you maintained it? I wouldn't listen to anybody that hasn't got a good answer for those, because it's like asking someone to you want to manifest $1 million, but you're talking to somebody, you're listening to someone that hasn't manifested more than 10,000. Right. They're not going to know the feeling place. They're not going to know what you need to feel, hold, and resonate to maintain that $1 million or the SP. So who you listen to is one of the most profound decisions you can make.
So Marvin and I always talk about too. It's like you really do have to be careful
Yeah.
these days, because you go online, there are so many choices of content to look at when it
Yes.
comes to the SP thing specifically.
Yeah.
Obviously for all these topics, you know, wealth, health, etc. But
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
hone in on the SP thing. So many choices, and especially if you're new to this law of assumption stuff, new to Neville,
That's what concerns me.
never had actually read Neville.
Yeah.
Who you first hear talk about this stuff, you are going to be very affected by, in all likelihood, if you're in a desperate place. And if they don't have a good understanding, or the, you know, the credentials or whatever you want to call it that you just mentioned, something like that, something that actually makes you feel solid, like this person actually genuinely can help me and direct me. If you just fall for the sensationalism and like, oh, this person says I can do it in 3 days or 3 weeks or whatever, you're probably going to end up in a more desperate state than you came in.
Yes.
And you're also going to know next to nothing about Neville. You're still going to never have read Neville or had that wonderful experience of pondering what he was talking about.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. I wonder, and I think a lot of us wonder who are old timers, like, yeah, how would I go about this stuff if it was 2024 and I'm finding out about the law of assumption? You know, like, and I hope that I would have the intelligence to stick to the book, go to the books first, you know, or and also go to, like, I want to like point out, like, people don't mention it nearly enough, like, you know, other like things like Israel Regardie wrote that wonderful essay on Neville. He was a friend of Neville's, like back in 1945. That's like a critical piece of you know, critical, intelligent, wonderful essay on Neville that nobody looks at. No one's ever even heard of that when I mentioned that now. And you know, most people on YouTube have never even heard of The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, it seems like, that are younger. And like, you know, Murphy, as we know, is very, very similar to Neville. And like, if Neville is a different part, it's just a different part of that same circle, like you were talking with Florence. But at the same time, I don't know, people online don't want to mention that a lot. They don't want to say, oh, Neville's not working for you the way you want. Maybe you want to listen to some of the SP advice of Joseph Murphy or of Florence, you know, because they can all work for you in different times.
Yes. But Florence often pisses people off if they've got an SP, because she says, basically, not in these words, don't do that. She says, pray for the divine design, pray for the perfect partner. And she has made many comments about, you know, things backfiring on people when they just go for that, and at all costs, you see. So I understand if you're coming in with, I've got an SP, and you hear Florence say that, you're going to go, well, no, I don't want to hear that. And if you're in a desperate state, it'll derail you, because she's telling you to not do the honing in and the focusing with the law of assumption and the law of attraction. So yeah, it depends what you read and when you read it and where your mindset is at the time that you hear it, because, you know, they go around the circle in different ways, but it's open-handedness and generalization, or clear and specific. Which way do you prefer? And so this is, you know, all a personal decision. There's neither a right or a wrong. There's just preference.
Yeah, Florence was very against she was very against willing, in a sense. And that's what a lot of people, when they're trying to get an SP in particular, a lot of people are approaching the SP community from a standpoint of will. And then, you know, people tell them, oh, again, taking Neville's words out of context, people tell each other, oh, you have to persist. You'll see somebody in the comments of a video or something saying, oh, you have to persist. No, you're doing it wrong. You have to persist. But somebody like Florence, like you were mentioning, she was very much against people persisting from that state of lack, like you were talking about. And so this is where a lot of people get hung up, because they're saying, they will try to conflate the two, and they'll say, well, Florence says this, but then Neville says persist, so I'm just going to persist. But if you're consistently persisting from a place of lack, then you're gonna get more lack in a sense, no matter how much you persist.
Correct. And I mean, Neville talks about states, and he talks about the old man. So The state of neediness and desperation is the repellent for love or for a specific person. They don't need to be around you. Energy moves, it's not stagnant. So if you are persisting in your desperate state, then
Right.
you will get the evidence of the absence of your specific person. That's a perfect match. It links up and it locks together. So if you want to really study the states part that Neville talks about, he talks about the old man. The old man is usually the one that's got all the fears, the doubts, the worries, and the shoulders down and freaking out, not being able to move because you're gridlocked with your anxiety. The new man is the one that stands up straight, is in the new state of, I'm not trying to get love from you. I am here in my own state of love. And my understanding, now that I've got a more mature understanding, the state of love is to overflow the love that I have generated by connecting to source, knowing where it comes from. It's an endless supply, being good at being able to call that up and send it forward as an overflow. That's the mature state of love. And that you know how to regulate yourself to no longer be fixated on your SP loving you, because a lot of this SP stuff isn't I love you. I hear this a lot. I love my SP so much. I love my SP so much. No, you don't. You're obsessed with your SP loving you. That is a completely different thing. So the shift has to occur in the state that you are I am love, and you send that love just in how you are, which is relaxed, playful, happy, and that you are not in a rush to accelerate to get over there. You are, doesn't matter how long it takes because you've got love over here. That person is no longer your fixation of getting love from them. That's when you set yourself free.
And that's why Agnes is the OG.
OG Agnes. Can I ask you, Agnes?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like the SP community, like people talking,
Yeah.
you know, about Neville and the SP stuff. What's the timeline? Like, when did it get so crazy? Because like it was always a thing, right? Like you said, even back in the 90s and 2000s, it was something people were into, right? But it seems to me like it's, again, YouTube and I guess Reddit or whatever have really heightened it. Like it's become like, it's like, that's how people think of Neville now. It's like SP, and like I can't, it's still hard for me to fathom that. Like, you know, because I'm a traditionalist when it comes to Neville. Like, but yeah, what's kind of the timeline? Like, has there been this major escalation, or is it always been a very, very popular topic? It's just we are hearing more about it because of social media now.
I think it was always a popular topic. However, now with online dating and social media, but also I'm finding, and this is quite sad to say, but I'm finding the self-love was better overall in the 90s. And I do think because there was a lack of social media and people had to meet people in person, then all these internet barriers where you do not learn social skills of how to approach the opposite sex if you're dating men, the same sex if you're gay, really it doesn't matter. But it's like there is look, all you got to do is watch Netflix. Love is Blind, Married at First Sight, and on it goes. It's this thing about forcing love in any way, shape, or form, because I've got no idea at all where I'm supposed to get love from. And I have been brainwashed by these platforms to think love is an external thing, and I must get it from you, person that I find attractive. So I think that's got so much worse. And I thought it was just me. But I've got, psychologists, counselors, people that are working in different, not quite what we do, but they're relaying back to me that what they're seeing is exactly the same. Now, it's not just the 20-year-olds, the teenagers. I'm seeing people in their 60s doing this.
Right.
Wow.
It's not, I thought it was age.
Right.
And I can see it. That's been the fascinating thing is it doesn't matter what decade. It's what have you been doing from that time, whether you're born Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennial, whatever. There is an epidemic, even probably pandemic of I need to get love on the outside and I'm so desperate I can't stand it. And I've got no idea what to do because self-love is just not there. So, and a lot of people, and understandably so, I mean, I didn't learn this at school. I didn't learn this in my family. There were certain parts. I mean, my mum was very loving and all of that, but she had me at 18. She was scrambling around learning stuff too. So it's like the foundation, whether it's cultural, religious, your family, your ancestry, the country you live in, there seems to be an absence of teaching the next generation about this. And if you haven't got it yourself, you can't teach the next generation. So years ago, when I was 17 and my mum was listening to Louise Hay, and I used to roll my eyes thinking this stuff is an absolute BS. Years later, I realized Mum actually knew what she was doing. And, then I got a tumor at 28 and then I had to go and run and find that book and read it to work out how to get rid of it. But it's like the self-love was so absent and the fixation with getting love from the outside. And the thing is, everybody was doing it. So it's not as if you were the only one. And still to this day, everyone is doing it. It's an obsession with getting a feel-good hit from someone else. And when you do that and you do it for long enough, that person will run away from you because they can't stand the energy drain. So the lesson for all of us is learning about where love really comes from. Stop putting that on to anyone. No one owes you anything. Once you get to a certain age, not even your parents owe you anything. And if you move around with the belief, no one owes me anything, and you build on, I am love, and you learn to do what Neville said, which was to get yourself into a state of love and no longer try and suction cap yourself onto someone, that then is where you break free of your suffering.
And it's so subtle. I mean, that was beautifully said. Like the states that you're talking about shifting, it's so subtle because so many people, they think that they're doing the living in the end state of love. They think they're doing it right, or they think they're just, I mean, Tim and I were speaking to somebody earlier and we had mentioned, we were saying, don't do it. You, for somebody like yourself, not you, Agnes, but I'm still talking about the person we were talking to. We were saying that you doing a living in the end scene right now of kind of being with your person is going to backfire. You know what I mean? It's not like you can try to do sats, you know what I mean? At night before you go to sleep or whatever. But at the end of the day, your overall state for 23 and a half hours a day, your overall state is, I don't have them. I miss them. I need them. That's your overall state. So even trying to do sats or robotic affirming, it's gonna backfire most likely.
Well, and then you're going to feel like there's something even more wrong with you because you weren't able to flip it. But living in the end, before you stabilize your self-love, is putting the cart before the horse. You can't ice a rotten cake. And you and I have talked about that so many times, Marvin. It's like you're trying to get love from someone and you're using them. You're not loving them. And when you realize, the person I'm with now, years ago, when I was still, I still had a few bad habits by the time I met him. one day in his exasperation said to me, look, I wasn't put on the planet just to meet your needs. Now,
I remember
that was a slap in the face, but a good one that woke me up, because hearing that tells you something about yourself. I'm actually making this person angry from my taking. I don't want to be that person, but I've slid back into doing that. Not cool. So he was tough, so tough. Honestly, I used to hate his guts on certain days. Honestly, he was tough. But I've got super good habits now because he didn't let me get away with stuff. And he wouldn't allow me to take and drain from him. The thing was, because he's a giver, he would give, but then it would be like, you want more, you want more, you want more. And he'd say to me, no matter what I give you, it's never enough. And that is the childhood stuff. So you got to go back and do that work. So it's like he has forced me to evolve faster than I probably would have liked. But it was very good, because now I don't put stuff on him, and I don't, we have our relationship gets better and better and better because we have hit each other in the childhood so many times. And once that nice little year or two of honeymoon phase is over, you get to see what your childhood stuff is that bumps up against the other person. And it's whether you got let's say, the balls to go through it, because it's so easy to get, like that, and then take off and find someone else, or create lots of drama, lots of arguing, coming back in, leaving, blocking, all that stuff that, that we hear a lot. I understand that. I've been through it so many times. So it's like, if you can see the lesson behind the relationship of the SP, you will do some of the greatest work on yourself you will ever do, because your specific person is one of your greatest teachers of all time, because they hit you in every raw pink nerve you have.
It's so huge. I mean, that's what it's so true. And it's what we try to tell people, and you have to hear it over and over again. We all have.
You do.
You say it's just how it is. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what's been interesting, because once since Marv and I have been partnering together, coaching people together, I've been doing more SP coaching than I've ever done, and it does seem like this SP stuff is kind of like it gets to the root of so many of the manifesting issues people have. Again, whether it's something seemingly unrelated, right? The SP thing, because it brings up the childhood, the trauma, the attachment, all of that stuff. It brings it out in a very, very interesting way. And of course, in the same way that your parents, your siblings, were some of your best teachers growing up for good and bad, your SP is going to be, one of your best teachers, if not your best teacher. Your kids are going to be, one of not your best teachers. So it's that kind of connection. So
yeah.
Or coaching too, Tim. For us, coaching is helping us, is being one of our best teachers.
Absolutely. Your client's your best teacher. So that's it's definitely it makes you, you're held to the fire. And as you said, Agnes, I mean, that's what I think a lot of people don't want to look at. It's like, okay, this shit's come up. Like I have to actually look at this, or look at myself. And that's when a lot of people say, all right, I'm out of here. They make a reason, either a conscious reason or unconscious reason, to flee, to break up, to part. But it will, as Marvin always says, we'll just come back next time. It will be the same thing in all likelihood.
Certainly does. And this is the most humbling journey that teaches you humility like no other.
That's what's crazy about today's online space, though, too, is it seems so ego driven a lot of the time. I mean, again, not to make huge generalizations, but we see in the SP and manifestation influencer space this kind of like, this is easy AF, like very, very, very easy. And I manifest what I want. And it's like, dude, my experiences are exactly the opposite. This is so humbling. and you become much more grateful and a much more giving person because of the experience of integrating these ideas, as opposed to like, oh, this is easy, I'm getting what. And no, it's not. It's like a givingness that you, I think Lester Levinson said that, you know, like love is a givingness, right? It's like, it's just wild when I hear these ideas spoken in such like this ego, self-involved tone, because that's not what, certainly not what Neville was getting at. I mean, geez Louise.
No, I agree. And I do think that type of law of attraction SP work, to me, is extremely repulsive, I will say. And also it is coming from such an entitled and me self-indulgence that it's just a whole other realm of, when I hear any of that, it repels me so greatly that I mean, I haven't watched any of that stuff for a long time because I found it quite repelling. And I don't think I think you've got your ladder up the wrong wall when you're doing that, but that's just my opinion after 30 years, each to their own. But life will teach you regardless of what you say, you know, it just does.
I think that's the truth.
It kind of goes back to finding the right person in a sense, because I remember I had somebody leave a comment in one of my videos, and they had mentioned that one of their friends had treated their person so bad. Some woman had treated her guy so bad, like just straight trash, and she admitted it. And she had said that her friend was doing SP techniques to try to get the guy back that she treated like crap. And she said, and because I think the video, the premise of the video was taking action, because that's something Tim and I talk about all the time. Sometimes the common sense thing to do is to actually just take action and communicate, which this community a lot of times, don't want to generalize, but a lot of times it seems like this community discourages that, to communicate and just take action. But this person, she was like, she left a comment about her friend treating her boyfriend or ex like crap, and then she was trying to manifest him back, and she goes, no, I'm not gonna reach out to him and apologize and do anything like that, because that wouldn't be LOA, because he has to come back to me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what happens when you kind of fall into the trap of kind of like these videos like that. And I'm not necessarily blaming any creator. I want to just preface my comments with saying that, like, I'm not blaming, because I think a lot of people, they mean well. And I think some of the viewers even mean well, potentially, but sometimes we have to put the responsibility on the consumer and the viewer and say, you got to be careful about what you consume, because whatever this person has been consuming, obviously they think, oh, I can treat them like shit and still do sats. And they'll come back and worship the ground that I walk on. Yeah. And it's probably not going to, not saying it can't, but most likely it probably isn't going to work that way.
Yeah. It's I mean, so much about this SP journey is about treating people with the utmost respect and cooling your skin down so that you don't throw all your drama onto them in whatever way you do it. Sometimes it's a silent treatment, sometimes it's punishing, sometimes it's blowing up someone's phone, sometimes it's showing up where you know people are going to be. It's inserting yourself through that control. And that's the bit that really needs looking at and working on, because when you feel out of control, you are highly wanting to control. That's how it works. So it's like, you know, that's why I love the work of Michael Singer, because he talks about the surrender, and he talks about, you know, a lot of his stuff goes against law of attraction, goes against Neville, because he's about letting the emotions pass through, feeling what you feel, looking at not needing love, looking at being love, you know. And so you listen to this stuff and you think, okay, well, who is it that I want to be? And, you know, I'm going to bring up one thing too that I'm hearing a lot. And there's a SP group that they have brought it to my attention too, that the whole affirmation of I am chosen. Now, that affirmation to me is an affirmation of taking, getting, and utilizing another person to make you feel adequate and loved because you're not feeling it yourself. Now, that affirmation, when you first come into SP work, most of us will probably do that affirmation. But as you evolve and you see that, like my partner said to me, I wasn't put on the planet to meet your needs. I am chosen is really about, in a way, a desperation. And it's coming from trying to ice the rotten cake again of desperation and feeling inadequate and not feeling loved, especially by them. So I brought this affirmation up because I'm seeing this overuse of that affirmation, and it is very telling of you if you are using it, because it shows you to yourself that you do not have I am love anchored within you, because if you did, you wouldn't even touch that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've that's actually been on my mind a lot, because I've also been noticing that, and we've been working with people and had, and also just having consultations and chatting with people where there is, in my opinion, I completely agree with you, like a real overusage of that kind of wording. And it as someone who did not get into this stuff at all with the SP thing in mind, it always kind of, so I was like, well, it just seems off to me, like immediately. And I so agree that it's actually coming from a place of neediness. So.
And I think too, I don't know if it's harder for you as men to say that to perhaps your women clients. I have brought that, because I am obviously female, I've brought that to the attention of the women that I come in contact with. If you're serious about having a loving relationship that's not codependent, you need to give that affirmation up. And you need to give up the he's obsessed with me, or he, you know, he just is fixated with me, or he's begging for me. If you're doing any of those, you are at, and it is levels of spiritual understanding and evolution, but that level is not going to give you a mature and loving relationship that's committed with someone who's of high quality. You have to give up your addictive, repetitive, habitual patterns, and also techniques that you do that are not going to serve you to get to where you want to go. Because in the end, you know, I mean, I hear all the time, and I'm sure you guys do too, I want a committed, loving relationship with someone that I know we're each other's person, and our relationship's evolving. It's turning into something amazing. It gets better and better, because most people have the belief relationships are hard, and my relationships keep getting worse. You can see it in the relationship that's the thoughts they have, because that's the deterioration that occurs. But the deterioration occurs because you're trying to get love from that person, because you're not in a state of love, like Neville talked about, and then you start to destroy the very thing you want to hold as very precious. So I think that affirmation is really quite destructive if you want to have a specific person and a good quality relationship with them. And when you really love someone and you say you love them, like a lot of people do with their specific person, if you really love someone, you wouldn't put that on them, that they have to choose you, pick you, beg for you, obsess for you. None of that is healthy. It's disturbing, and it would be disturbing if your SP knew you were doing that to them.
That's a good point.
Great point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite, I think it's good if you've been someone else's SP and they do that stuff to you, because then you learn what it's like to be on the other side of it. I think when that happened to me a couple of times, wow, that gave me so much education on the SP topic, because I didn't want to be that person's SP, and I was never going to be their SP. They could have done law of attraction 24 hours a day for the next year, and I was never going to be their SP because it just weren't my person. You know, they were too needy. It was a needy energy. So yeah, I mean, I was quite repelled by that, but it was really good for me to go through it because I thought, wow, whew, that's how I've been, you know, for other people. Ouch, that's given me a slap in the face of my own, you know. It's kind of cringy when you see the stuff you've done and then someone's doing it to you. It's like, oh, that was a good lesson, being on the other side of the coin.
For sure.
Yeah.
This has been a nice light conversation. Wow.
Light conversation. Yeah, the SP topic is a bit of an atomic bomb topic. It really is, because it gets very heated and it gets very intense and it gets very you know, especially when you're going into my SP's married, or my SP has a girlfriend, or my SP got their other person pregnant and I still want to be with them. Those types, that's a minefield for other people. And also, you know, as a coach, how you would relay information about that, because a lot of people are in those situations, and these situations are very disturbing and very real when you're in them. So it's like, you know, it's where do I sit on that topic and where do I stand? And, you know, it's a very sensitive topic to talk about in the SP dynamic with someone, you know, because people want to hear that they can have their SP at all costs. And, you know, I think you can have a lot of what you want. I just don't think you can have everything. And I certainly wouldn't, and I will say it, intrude on someone else's relationship. To me, that's spiritually incorrect.
But even then, that's not even following Neville's golden rule, right? If you want to
exactly
bring up Neville's golden rule, I mean, Neville's golden rule essentially coincides with what Florence is saying.
Yes.
People don't talk about that, because Neville, obviously, you know, doing to others as you want them to do to you or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the same. It echoes the same sentiments that Florence talks about in, you know, to get the divine selection.
That's all new thought. I mean, that's basically all of this stuff. This core of it's golden rule, you know?
Yeah. And we don't know if someone's going to get divorced or someone's going to separate. We don't know. But while my opinion is, if someone is with someone, step away. They've made their choice. And if you really love them, this is an opportunity for you to practice unconditional love until they are free again. Or maybe they won't. We don't know. That's God's department. And I'm sure God will let you know if something changes. But how you treat another woman or man in a relationship will be the boomerang that you receive.
I just talked about that in the book, and with Florence's book, in that example, when the woman, I don't know if it was the cap incident, where
Florence,
I was just talking to Tim about this with somebody else when we were on a call with someone, and her husband or whatever had left, and she was mad and she was hating him, and I think he might have found another woman, and Florence was like, she told her, "You're not loving that man, you're hating that man. You know, you need to bless him." And she's like, "No, I'll only bless him if he comes back or whatever." And Florence is like, "Well, then you don't get it, basically. Like, you don't." And so then eventually that woman got to the point to where she was like, "You know what? All right, God bless the cap or whatever." And then he came back. You know what I mean? It's like you said, when you're in those situations of somebody being married, you know, or a third party, whatever, it's like that's the time where you practice giving love, you know, and just saying, you know what? Because personally, me, I would never, and I have never given that kind of energy to someone that was in a relationship. You know what I mean? If you're in a relationship with somebody else, I have never done this, and I tell people that I work with, don't worry about doing techniques to try to get them to break up and doing all that type. Like, you could use that energy so much better on yourself. And then, like you said on earlier, if you were in a relationship with somebody, would you want someone secretly on the side doing techniques for you and your person to break up? If you were in a relationship, you wouldn't want that either. So again, it goes back to following the rule.
Boomerang's gonna come back on that.
The boomerang. Yeah, exactly. You know about that story, Marvin? There's a line in that story, because I read that story like about 1,000 times when I was like tied up in knots in a pretzel state, over something. There's a line in that, there's a line in that story where she goes, one day she woke up and all suffering had ceased. Yeah. That night he called her, and it's like, it's so easy to breeze over that sentence. But she set herself free from the feeling of loss. Yep. She removed her feeling of loss. She finally crossed over into being able to send unconditional love. And isn't it interesting? Once she shifts on the inside, whoosh, the cap comes back.
That's when it's instant. It's like that.
Yeah.
Is the instant they talk about after all that. I don't know how long that story was. I don't mean to cut you off either. It's just interesting.
Yeah. No worries, Tim. No worries. It's just one of those things. It's like it's the tip of the iceberg. She woke up one morning, all suffering had ceased, but she'd been talking to Florence for months to get to that point. So it's like an instant thing that you see, but it was months in the making, because she was in anguish and she was in resentment and she was in, I'm second best to whoever she is, the person that the cap is with. So it's like you can, and she finally understood and this is, my partner always says, you will see who a woman really is, how she treats other women in the presence of men.
I'll never forget you told me that one time.
Yeah. I'll never forget that he told me that too, because I remember thinking, I've never thought about that. But, I've always tried to treat women well. But when you're listening to how other women treat each other, you think, well, you are creating for yourself the very thing you do not want to experience, which is anguish in relationships because you've stepped on another woman or you've tried to do something to their relationship, like what you were saying. You have to act with dignity behind closed doors. The universe sees you. It knows what you're doing, even if you don't do it in public.
I've always said that.
Yeah. You
can't run from yourself.
No, stop sticking little pins into the doll. Don't do it. So it's a good thing, because when you are hurt and you are jealous and you feel betrayed, you have to harness yourself. I remember when my husband left and he was having an affair with a groupie that, he was a musician. This is so cliche. Anyway, he was having an affair with this woman, and the whole thing that he was having an affair had come out. He's down the road 2 streets away, laying in bed with her, and I'm 2 streets away laying in bed on my own, and she's laying in bed with my husband. Man, it took everything I had not to light a match and burn that house down. Not that I would have done it, but the thoughts were intensely there. Yep. Regulating yourself when you have been totally betrayed, it takes some self-control. But if you do it and you go within and you transform it, no one can take that away from you. No one. It's a power like no other. So, but it takes, a little bit of practice.
A little bit.
You won't have to lift a finger. Yeah, no, I love how you said harness there. That's a great way of describing it. That's what it's like.
Reining yourself in, from your out of controlness, because that's what it feels like. You're out of control because someone supposedly has taken something that belongs to you, and really they didn't. I mean, I can see it now. I was in such I'm second best, I'm not good enough. No one took anything away from me. I basically pushed it out the door and then someone picked it up. So, when you see all that, the resentment just dismantles itself and dissolves. But that took years to get to that thinking, because it's so easy to go, look at him, look at him, look at him, what he did, what he did, what he did. I'm the victim. But no, the victim in this case was me pouring I'm second best, I'm not good enough, I know this is going to happen to me because it's happened to me 4 relationships in a row. Why would it not happen to me again? Fear of it, but fueling it nevertheless. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I think that was beautifully said, and that reminds me of accountability. It's like I think that's what a lot of people struggle in the beginning of their SP journey is accountability, and
Yeah.
it takes people months, if not years, to realize,
Yes.
oh, I got to be accountable. Like, yeah, what the person did was wrong for sure, no doubt. Like, they're not off the
Yeah.
hook either. You know,
Yeah.
your ex-husband was wrong. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? No, we're not. That's not even a discussion. But however, the accountability part comes in where you say, my state of being is attracting somebody like that time and time again. And that's where the harsh accountability medicine, you know, Tim and I like to say Robitussin over here in the States, the cough medicine or whatever, you know, that's where the harsh, you know, medicine comes in that you have to take because, you know, if you never hold yourself accountable and you're always saying, oh, it's their fault, their fault, their fault. No, wait a second. You're playing a role in this too, whether you realize it or not.
For sure. And the thing is, my husband was a narcissist and a sex addict before I met him. But the fact that he came towards me matched my I'm second best and I'm not good enough.
Right.
We fit together like hand in glove. So it's like, you know, when you look back, there is no blame. There's just understanding of he did that, I did this. I looked like the innocent one, but no one saw what I was doing beneath the surface. So, you know, I mean, I can tell you that now because I know what I did. I was there in my mental anguish of I'm not good enough and I'm second best, which was really not true, but I had continued to marinate myself in that for a long time. So, yeah. It's
Big
funny,
breath, everybody. Deep breath.
Going back down memory lane. But yeah, the good thing is, you know, reading Neville is what freed me. Reading Florence is what freed me. Reading these things and then focusing your way out. It's like there is no I'm second best.
Right.
There is no competition in divine mind, as Florence says. There's just other women, other men. So what? You know, like they're just doing the best they can, just like you are. They're scrambling around just like you are. So once you understand and you treat other women or other men just like you and remember that they are you pushed out, they're doing your best just like you are. They're bringing up your insecurities. You're probably bringing up theirs. Everybody gets bumped around and bruised by the stuff that is still sticking out from childhood. You know?
You know what's funny? You know what's funny too, real quick, is this has been a theme in our groups, on our group chats, working with people, is a lot of people don't realize a lot of the bad stuff that happens, it's actually not bad and it catapults you to what you actually want. And so you look at all these bad things, they're essentially stepping stones to you finally getting to that, your specific person finally. Even though you can't understand it, you're like, why did I go through that? But in hindsight, you look back and you're like, oh, this actually was the road that I needed to take. This negative stuff. We had a guy in our group the other day. He gave a really positive testimonial about all of these bad things were happening to, like, he was having these crazy thoughts. But it turns out that him having those thoughts is he was going to the gym. He got kind of upset because he looked over and he saw one of his, you know, his exes or whoever with their new boyfriend. And so, but him seeing that, it caused this other girl to come over and talk to him. He had actually did a list technique and he wanted that to happen. So he didn't realize that him getting angry and seeing that and moving caused the other girl that he liked to come up to him and ask for his name and that type of stuff. So like a lot of times we don't realize the negative stuff that we're going through is actually going to help us get our manifestation potentially. So yeah.
For sure.
I mean, the context of that story too is he was angry before. Seeing the girlfriend in the gym didn't make him. That's not what triggered him. He was angry before about something unrelationship related. He was pissed off in the car. Tried to compose himself. Kind of did. Went into the gym. Saw his ex-girlfriend. Didn't want to bother her, and her new boyfriend didn't want to be a hassle. So walked over, and then the girl he had written in his list that he wanted her name came up to him and wanted to talk to him. So, you know, a little story that illustrates the point of the bad in unexplainable ways is often what is the direct precedent to the good, or as Florence always said, it's darkest before dawn,
Absolutely is. And it's you can't see it while you're in it, but boy, later you look back and you think, I'm so glad that happened, when you can see the lessons in things, and then you shift mentally and emotionally and spiritually forward in your understanding of love, because that's all it's about. It's like being able to hold that more often. That's a big task on a daily basis.
Yeah. And it's a lifelong practice. And again, that's why it's so funny to hear people say, 3 days, 3 months, whatever, because it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's not about, and it's like, and again, even like the Cap story, like we mentioned, like as soon as she felt clear, right? As soon as she felt, that sense of harmony, it happened. But again, it was months leading up to that, or whatever the time frame was for that, and so often we hear these instant successes, we don't know what preceded it, the pain, the suffering, going through the furnace before it came. So it's not instant. I mean, at least not usually. We don't have to get into a philosophical conversation about it. It's like, just pragmatically, you got to move and process things and go through your life and learn, I think, and feel love more in a more giving way as opposed to a taking way. That's not something you microwave for 2 minutes and it's done for any of us.
No, and it doesn't stop. And it doesn't stop, because the one thing Tim and I always say, Agnes, and as you know, is the real work starts once your SP comes back. Like once you're in a relationship and once it starts, that's when the real work starts. So a lot of these people, they think, oh, I got my SP, now the work is done. And they stop doing the work, and then they wonder why I lost them again or whatever. So no, it starts once they come back.
That's so true. And I do think it's quite common for people to have a breakup with a specific person. Then they do all this fantastic self-love work. The person comes back, and then they drop it, and they have to learn the second breakup. And then the second time they go, I cannot let my SL, self-love work, drop this second time. Now I know better, I can do better. But I see that pattern quite a lot, where as soon as the love starts coming from that source again, I feel great. And then you get this false sense of confidence. So it's a second slap in the face, but you tend to learn it quicker the second time, because you go, hang on, I've dropped that, I forgot that, let me go back to doing this, and you get back on the surfboard. So but it's a hard lesson. It's harder in a way the second time, because you go, damn, I knew better than this.
Right. I did this again. I did it right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Agnes. I guess we're wrapping up here. Any final words? For people watching this, if you don't know Agnes stuff, you should. And she's got a bunch of courses, videos that can help you out, especially with self-love and self-concept. So,
and
Agnes,
you guys do
like to share?
Yes, you guys do too. So when I upload this to my channel, I will be putting down below your bits and pieces, so that people can go and find you on your channels as well. Especially you, Tim, because my channel's very used to this organic nut here, Marvin. They've seen him many times, but it'd be nice to point them to your channel. Oh, Tim.
You come over to my channel, watch out. Just kidding, Marvin.
It's been so nice talking about this, because it's nice having that female-male balance, because I do think it's completely different perspectives, especially if you've been in heterosexual relationships. And I do think it's hard for men, you guys, to speak up on this topic, because it's easy to get shot down in flames about certain things that you say. And I think it takes real courage to say certain things in this community when you're male. I think it does. I think it's harder for you guys than it is for me as a woman, because most of the SP community, I would say, I'm not sure on your channels, but it would be 80-20.
I agree.
Is it like that for you guys, 80-20 roughly?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a significantly higher percentage of females, but we've noticed for our group, our one-on-one clients in our group coaching, it's much more like 50-50. So it's something about men speaking to men about this, because
Great.
it does seem
Yes.
like there are more men into this subject than there was maybe before YouTube or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, and I told Marv that. I said, watch. I said, I bet you we get more guys than you think, and it's been very interesting. So that will lead to a further discussion we'll all have to have, but something also I think that more people hopefully can keep an eye on, because it is interesting, and that is. Yeah, the different ways of saying the same good message.
For sure. Yeah. And just to finish up, I just want to say to the people that are watching, the SP journey is a journey that you will think is about one thing, and it becomes so much about something else. And that something else is it becomes about you, and it becomes about your weak links, the things you haven't wanted to look at, the things that are still you're carrying from childhood, from school, from family, from culture, from your country. All these things come into you from the time you're born till the time you're probably about 18 or 19. And then you spend from about 19 till the day you die offloading and decoding what happened from 0 to 18. But the great thing is, if you do it and you take it on and you work on it bit by bit by bit, you feel better and better. Your relationship with your SP, or whether you choose someone new, becomes such an amazing, it's like watering a plant and you're seeing it grow, and you really get to have this incredible enjoyment, whether you're alone or with them. It doesn't matter. You can have an amazing experience in both directions. So it's there for you if you do the work on your self-love and yourself. And then your SP journey, it will just fall into place if you do the foundational work. So that's it.
It's OG wisdom right there, Agnes.
I can just see Marvin giggling away.
All right, everybody. Until next time, be sure to check out Agnes if you haven't, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.